Hello, welcome to the Bonsai channel, brought to you by Dallas Bonsai Garden. So let's take a few minutes today to talk about one of the most commonly used junipers for bonsai, especially for beginners, and that is the Juniper Procumbens. But before we go any farther, let's look at a turntable here, something everyone should have to use to work with their trees. This one here is ideal for use. Turning it either way, and it has this little knob here, which is the positive stop. Won't move anywhere. A really great looking turntable that you can get from us here online. Now let's go back to the Juniper Procumbens. The Juniper Procumbens is actually not a tree but a shrub. It's up to you to make it look as much as possible like a tree. And the only way you can do that is by using the branches that the tree has. Now older specimens are going to have usually a good array of branches. Younger ones, such as your 1-gallon junipers, aren't going to have very many branches at all. And for that reason, I would suggest not even using a 1-gallon Procumbens juniper. It's going to take you at least 3 to 4 years to get any kind of branch structure to make this little shrub here look more like a tree. Okay, once again, branch structure for any kind of a juniper is very, very important. Today we're going to talk about an established juniper that I recently purchased and some of the options on styling it. Now after you watch the video here, make sure you go back and look at some of the pictures that I shot of the tree, more or less before type pictures, to see what this tree really looked like before I did any work on it. So what you're seeing here now is the original front and the way I styled it from the way it was purchased, this being the original front. Notice some of the gin over here. Now with gin, in order to keep it looking good and keep it from rotting out, you're going to need to use a product called lime sulfur. Something like this here. Lime sulfur is going to preserve the wood, and it's going to bleach it and make it stand out and give the tree more of an appeal. So with this being the emphasis on the front here, the way I styled it, after cleaning it all up, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this at the front, even though this tree has wonderful trunk movement, as you can probably notice. But if we can zoom in just a little bit on this area right here, if you can notice, there's almost a void in this area right here. There's no rootage, no nabari as they would call it. Plus the first person that worked on this tree left a little piece of a branch here that you will notice on the before picture that had to come off. I took it off for the main reason because it was really distracting. But when you take a branch off of something like this on this type of juniper, you're going to get what's known as a bullseye spot. So in order to cover up the bullseye spot, I went ahead and put a bit of cut paste over it. Now this wound might heal and it might not. Junipers are known not to heal very well, but at least this little cut paste here will prevent it from looking too much like a bullseye. Let me show you the type of cut paste I use here. This cut paste here is something we also sell here that you can buy from us. Let me show you just a little bit what it looks like here. It comes in a little plastic tub, wrapped in plastic coating here, and it looks just a little bit like putty. And what you'll do is take a small piece of this here stuff off and just start to knead it up a little bit with your fingers. Now as you're kneading it, you'll be able to feel that it's a little sticky. So if you put a little water on your hand, it'll alleviate the stickiness, and when you go to apply it to the trunk, you have a better option to work with it and to spread it out and smooth it into the bark. So with all this in mind, being the front here having a part that really is very distractful, plus this little area here with the cut paste, I decided to turn the tree almost 180 degrees and use something like this for my front. Notice the nice nabari I have here to work with now, something that when you first look at the tree, your eyes are drawn to the nabari. still I have wonderful movement in the trunk here. So from turning it almost 180 degrees, I didn't lose anything. I'm very fortunate that with this tree here, I have both a front or a back that I can use. Now, in order for me to get the side I really want, because I don't want this plane here, I want this plane here. So what I'll have to do, and what I did to save time, was to lift it up out of the pot. And I was very fortunate that this tree, the roots haven't been worked on quite some time. And actually what I have here is almost like a brick. But with this, I was able to trim my edges, like so, without disturbing the roots very much at all. Or I can place it now back in my pot at the correct angle that I want. And even lift it up. Now, in order for me to do this type of work, you're going to need something like these here to do that kind of work, to get that much soil and roots off. Notice how that just fits right over that? It does a fantastic job cutting off anything I need, any area. These also are a product that you can pick up from our online store. Now, how about this pot? Something like this would work really nice. All I have to do now is fill in the voids here with my soil. I like to do most of my really good root pruning in the spring, which is for me the preferable time to do root pruning. So I'm going to leave it like this for now until springtime comes, where I can do more pruning and get it to where it needs to be. Or how about this high-end tokoname pot, chosen to balance off what we have on top here. Again, I'll leave it like this until the springtime comes, where I can cut more off and allow it to set down maybe just a little bit more. And all I'll do is just fill in my void again with my soil. And don't forget, with the tokoname pots, you also have these added holes so I can wire in the tree. It's not going to go anywhere. So let's take a few minutes now to talk about our foliage and how we work that to give this little shrub more of an appearance of a tree. As I mentioned earlier, the importance of branches and branch structure. Notice how detailed the branches are very visible on the tree. And the only way you can do that is by cleaning off all your interior foliage. If we can zoom in, I'll give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So notice what needs to be cleaned up here. Little pieces like this here that are just in the way. Take your little scissors here and just nip that off of there. If you'll notice little stuff like this here on the inside, take your scissors here and just nip that right off. Areas of your tree, such as that, all over will need to be cleaned up. In order to do that, you'll need scissors such as these here, which are called pine bud cutters, to get deep inside your tree and pick out those little pieces that don't need to be in there. And by doing so, what you're going to do is open up the inside of the tree, give it more light, and allow those branches to be more exposed. One of the things you'll also need to know, especially as beginners, and we get many inquiries on this, is how to pinch the buds on your juniper tree. Very easy thing to do with these. All you need to do is grab a hold like this here and just twist and pull off. Twist and pull off. Now, with these type of junipers, the more pinching you do, the more browning of the tips you might get in some areas. But in due time, the browning tips will eventually fall off by themselves. Another way you can do your pinching is by going inside with your scissors, as I noted before, and taking off the piece that you would normally pinch off by cutting it off. Another thing you want to remember on working on your junipers is to take little pieces of foliage that is hanging down, nip that off. Anything that appears to be hanging down needs to come off. And the reason for this is that your tree looks like it's alive. When your foliage is pointing up, it gives the tree the essence of life. Any kind of foliage that's hanging down makes the tree look shabby and not really having that much eye appeal to it. Now if you'll notice this area here, I even have a branch that's somewhat hanging down. It needs to come up like this here. Just like this. And what we're going to do now is wire this branch up to give it the stability it needs. I'm going to use a piece of copper wire. Copper wire is the best to use for holding up branches like that. So what we'll do now, we'll start in the middle of this branch here, coming up, begin our tightening process, around, underneath, just like so. Now notice the difference how that looks, like that there. And now with our wire cutters, like so. Now don't you think that has better appeal than what it did before with the branch hanging down? So one final thing to remember on keeping your tree looking really good is the fertilization of it. These type of trees, the Juniper Procumbens, needs to have more or less a fertilizer that has a little bit of acid to it. These trees are somewhat acid loving and really would like something like that to help them along. They also need trace minerals. Fertilizers of that type we sell here also. And one last thing you're going to need to really make it look good, to keep it looking really green, is a product called chelated iron. Now chelated iron could be applied between 1 month and 6 weeks depending upon what your tree looks like. Don't wait for it to start turning yellow before you use the product. Use it within those intervals and your tree will be looking just as nice as this one is. Now one drawback of using chelated iron is this nice, real nice looking moss here is not going to be too much nice after that, because the chelated iron has a tendency to dye it out. But moss is something you shouldn't really worry too much about. It's a nice thing to look at, but it's not really beneficial for your tree. So don't worry too much about your moss dying out. The most important part is to keep the structure, the beauty of your tree looking just as nice and green as possible. So thanks for stopping by, and I hope that these few minutes we spent together was beneficial for those of you that use juniper as part of your bonsai collection. And hopefully in due time your trees will look just as good as you want them to.